So we are doing periodization. This is PowerPoint tell. We got two to get through today. We got periodization, so we're gonna do some examples of how to time things out, which we'll talk about again with a lot of examples here in a couple days, because this is actually very similar. Like what we're doing today is gonna be like what your project is like in this course, and then we will also get into injury prevention today. So we're gonna look at ankle sprains and knee problems and things like that that are very common injuries in sports. So we're going to describe how our acute variables work today. I'm going to move through some of them very quickly because I know you guys know them, but I will put them in our notes just because they make decent enough flashcards. I don't think you're going to actually. Here's what I always give the same asterisk whenever I teach this PowerPoint. If you want to make flashcards, you want to put these each individual things in your notes, you're definitely welcome to. They can ask you these things on your test, but they're the things that are like language that we use so often that I think everybody instinctively knows them. But it's going to be like a rep is one complete movement of an exercise. So you're going to see that in just a second. Then we're going to describe the phases of the OPT, and then we'll talk about how to write programs for each. So when we talk about like program design in general, it is going to be referred to as a planned, purposeful system. It's so funny. They put this in bullet points, and this is literally like the definition. It's a sentence. I don't know why they did this. It's a planned, purposeful system used to achieve, and I guess it's not perfectly what it's saying here, but achieve an individual's goals, right? So it's a planned, purposeful system used to achieve like whatever goals somebody is like aiming for, right? So what's nice about it is like when you're designing a program, you got to consider all the physiology that we've talked about, right? Like all that physiologic stuff that we have kind of talked about in the past, where it's like, you know, how do I target this energy system versus that energy system? And it's like, why do you want to target that energy system? Well, it's like, because that's the one that I want to target this energy system because that's the one that you know, has this physiologic outcome, which is my client's outcome. Or it's like, I want to target this energy system because that's the one that is associated with, you know, developing endurance, and my client needs endurance. So, you know, you want to focus on doing that appropriately. The nice thing, and the nice thing about the OPT model is it does all that work for you. You simply have to follow all the sets, reps, and tempo and intensity rules, and all of it happens automatically. So it's a planned and very systematic system. It does improve basically all components of athleticism. And so you can use that in order to target your athletes very specifically. So we love the OPT model because we're going to use that. Actually, I guess I'll put this in our notes for the one time. So the NASM OPT model is a systematic and planned systematic model that is used for program design. And we put everything on our OPT template. So there is a difference between those two. And then I'll put that up here as well. The NASM OPT template is the template used to write individual workouts, right? So here's all of our acute variables. So first, I want to put down as a definition what an acute variable is. This is the only one that I think sometimes is just language that we don't use commonly. It's like, what do you mean? I mean, we all know what acute variables are, but like, if this is a definition that they might ask you, and it's the only one on the whole list that I think we don't use in language form very often. So acute variables. Okay, it's not up there. Acute variables are going to be the individual components of a workout program that, and then this is the key sentence right here, that determine the amount of stress placed on the body. Okay, so you use your acute variables depending on which you choose to determine like what type of stress. Like, are you focusing more on like metabolic stress by doing like very high repetitions? You consider that repetitions as your acute variable. Are you placing a lot of like neurological stress by lifting super heavy weight? Well, then you focused on high intensity. So your acute variables are reps and sets, intensity, tempo, rest, frequency, exercise selection, and duration. And so each of them have their own sort of interesting effects here. So the first one we're going to look at is repetitions. Well, like I said, we're going to go through all these, and I know you guys all know what these things mean. This is the only class where we really kind of put them out in definition. So I just want to make sure that you get that at least once. So a repetition is one complete movement of an exercise. Okay, so it's the entire concentric, eccentric, and isometric actions. Now, here's one of the most important things. It is a means for you to count the time under tension. Now, obviously, tempo is a big part of like time under tension as well. But your repetitions are, we use your repetitions to kind of determine that. So one of the reasons why like hypertrophy is sort of in the middle of everything is because like it is a medium amount of time under tension, it's a medium amount of repetitions, it's a medium everything. And so like because of that, it causes the most inflammation because it's like high level stress, although not like maximal levels of stress. It's like a high number of repetitions, but certainly not a maximal number of repetitions. Like it's really in the middle. And so because of that, it creates lots of inflammation, and that inflammation drives cellular growth. And that's why hypertrophy is the way it is. Whereas, so the time under tension is still really high, even though the repetition scheme is sort of in the middle. But you want to talk about like lots of time under tension, well then look at the strength endurance or stabilization phases, right? Both of those are extreme time under tension because like they are at a super slow tempo. And we know time under tension drives growth, right? So it's kind of funny, because then you have the max strength and power phases. And everybody thinks of like max strength as a great way to like gain muscular size because it's like the heavy lifting. But max strength isn't always the best way to experience like muscle growth. It is really good for guys and girls both because it does result in like some hormonal boosts. And so there's definitely some benefits to heavy lifting for cellular growth in regards to like testosterone boosting and things and growth hormone and things like that. But in terms of like time under tension, you should be lifting for a very low number of repetitions, and you're trying to move relatively quickly while you're doing it. So there's not actually a lot of time under tension, which is why like max strength isn't always that great for growth, That's actually a weird mistake that some bodybuilders make, is they actually lift too heavy, which is kind of surprising, but that's why you kind of want to go in waves. And then we have, the power phase. The power phase is the worst for growth. The power phase definitely does not result in very large muscles because there's just not enough time under tension. You're doing explosive movements and then it's over. So your repetitions are a good way to kind of count that. And so they might ask you about that. So it's a means, oops, darn it. Provides a means to count time under tension. And then we have sets are a group of repetitions. Now, one thing to remember here is it has sets have an inverse relationship with reps, okay? And what that means is as sets go, or as reps go up, sets go down, and vice versa, okay? So that works in both directions. So if your sets are really high, it's because you are doing a low number of reps. It's very rare that we want to do a high number of sets and a high number of reps because again, that's just too much stress and might cause like breakdown of a system. So they work backwards of each other. The closest you can get to high sets and high reps is, again, hypertrophy, because it's all about just like beating up the body so much that it creates a lot of like cellular growth. So inverse relationship with your repetitions. As reps go up, sets go down, or if we said as reps go down, sets go up. They are always backwards of each other. And they're all also tied to the third one here, which is intensity. So intensity is it's a percentage of your 1 rep max. So intensity, what is the actual, I'm trying to remember the textbook definition here. I should know this. I should know it word for word. That's what it is. The amount of effort compared with maximal effort, I believe, or I think I might be missing a word. It's the amount of effort used compared with the maximal effort. Anyway, that's intensity, right? It's a percentage of your 1 rep max. So typically represented as a percentage of 1 rep maximum, right? Again, going back to what we just said, like sets and reps, how did we come up with the right number of sets and reps? Well, they were based on intensity. We knew that we had to lift at a certain intensity in order to experience like muscle growth. And so like those sets and reps were kind of determined by how intense things were. You can't do your 1 rep max for more than 1 rep. Otherwise, it's not your 1 rep max anymore, right? And that intensity is lower. So let's say like when you first started going to the gym years ago, maybe, your barbell squat was 45 pounds and that was it. That was like, like that was your 1 rep max back in the day. But then like you got stronger slowly over time. And so now that's your 20 rep max, which means it's, probably, and that's not even now. But if it's your 20 rep max, that means it's actually close to like, your 1 rep max should be close to double that way. It should be about 90 pounds. Because if you can do it for about 20 reps, that should be somewhere around 50% of your 1 rep max. So that's intensity, right? This also has an inverse relationship with sets and reps. So it is determined by your sets and reps and has an inverse relationship with repetitions, right? So again, like as your reps go up, your intensity has to go down. If your intensity goes up, then your reps will go down. If you were lifting for your 5 rep max and you slap an extra like 10 pounds on there, it ain't gonna be your 5 rep max anymore. You're probably gonna be doing maybe 1 or 2 reps. And then we have our acute variables. What I say? Oh, acute variables. We have rest interval. And your rest interval is the time, it says recuperation between sets. I believe it's the time taken to recuperate between sets. I think that's what it actually says. It's the amount of time taken. This is super important, by the way. Rest periods are one of the most important intervals that we have got, or acute variables that we've got, because this is going to determine how much energy you have for your next set. And if you don't take enough rest, you can't do your next set properly, which means you're going to lift too few repetitions, which means that now you're kind of like blending energy systems. This is why this stuff actually is so important. Like sometimes people are like, well, if I feel good, why don't I just go into my next set? And it's like, well, you might feel fine, but like if that means that you don't get enough repetitions in your next set, then you're not lifting at the right intensity. You're lifting too heavy, or you are not giving yourself enough rest. And then the opposite is true as well. Like if you take, if you're not lifting, like imagine if your 1 rep max is, let's say it's 100 pounds. My internet is being a jerk. Let's say your 1 rep max is 100 pounds and you go to lift 75 pounds. So that's 75% of your 1 rep max. That should correspond in general with about 12 repetitions. somewhere around there, 75%, about 12 reps, or maybe just a little bit higher, should correspond with about 75% of your 1 rep max. So your 1 rep max is 100 pounds. You go to lift 75 pounds. That's 75%. You should be able to do 12 reps. But your program that you printed out from the internet told you to do 5 reps. So you go and you do your 5 reps, and then you end because that's what it said on the piece of paper. Well, did you work hard enough to experience like change? Like, did you apply the principle of overload? No, because you didn't do the right number of repetitions based on your intensity. Well, the same thing is true of your rest interval. If you don't take enough rest, and therefore you can't do enough repetitions to experience like growth, it's not really a reps problem, it's a rest problem. So, you know, all of these variables kind of need to be followed because that's sort of what results in these specific physiologic adaptations. So, time taken to recover.
I'm definitely guilty of that. Like sometimes I try to short my rest and then I end up hurting myself in the long run because I'm not actually performing at peak performance, correct?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, like, there's so many times where I'm like, I gotta get out the door soon, and we just, I don't know, I've been talking a little bit longer, or took too much time goofing around, or setting plates up, or my warm up was too long, or something, and it's like we gotta move, and then it's like those last few things you're cutting the rest off, and it's like, it totally affects like how your muscles get worked, and sure enough, like I'll feel it the next day where I'm like sore everywhere, but that one last muscle that I was working, I think we're all guilty of that in some capacity. And so like, it's great because that kind of, you can kind of use that as an example of being like, oh man, like this stuff matters, like, you really feel it. So the big thing that they want you to know about rest interval is it will determine the energy replenishment before the next set. So that's obviously really, really important. It determines how much energy you have next time. Now, a general term that you're going to hear is volume or training volume. And your training volume is actually as simple as your sets times your reps. So it's the total amount of work performed. And so it is your sets times reps, okay, equals volume. So obviously we want to have enough training volume to see growth, right? But we want to make sure that we don't have too much training volume with high intensity because that could result in like an injury, right? So this also has an inversely related to training intensity, right? So as training intensity climbs, training volume must lower and vice versa, right? So these are going to be inversely related to each other. You basically, let's look at a couple different examples here. Like let's look at NASM sets and reps. Can I get this on one chart? You know what am I doing? I guess I could just pull up the big chart real quick. In fact, I will close that. Where's big chart? There it is. All right, let's take a look at big chart here. And we'll go down to resistance training because that's really what we're talking about here. So we're in this column. And if we look at like stabilization, I'm just gonna actually say, watch this. This is gonna be my smartest moment. Okay, well, it would have been my smartest moment. Why did that happen? Insert table. All right, now they're all by themselves, and I can make this bigger. All right, so let's take a look at our total volume here for resistance stabilization, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and actually, you know what we'll do? We'll insert column to the right, and we'll label each of these total training volume. All right, so this is 1 to 3 sets of 12 to 20 repetitions. So we're going to take the lowest number here and the lowest number here, and we're going to multiply those. So that is going to be at the bare minimum, if you're in stabilization, you're going to end up doing 12 repetitions per exercise. But at the maximum, you're going to do up to 60 reps per exercise. So that's a lot of training volume, right? But that makes sense considering that we have some of our lowest training intensities here. And when we look at 20 repetitions, your 20 repetition max corresponds with about 50% intensity. So it's pretty safe to do up to 60 total reps. We'll put total. It's pretty safe to do that because the intensity is so low. Now let's look at strength endurance, right? So this is going to be a total volume of 16 up to 4 times 12. So that is going to be 48 reps. Oh, hold on. Total training volume is going to be 16 to 48 total reps, right? So the total training volume goes down ever so slightly. Now we're going to see a little bump here. I keep losing Deborah. I don't know if it's my connection. I think I'm kicking Deborah out over and over again with my crap internet. So let's look at our total volume here. So this is going to be 6 times 3. So this is going to be a total training volume of 18 to 5 times 12, 60 reps again. Okay, so this is really this kind of weird bump. And you'll notice that, like, for the most part, our volume goes up, even though our intensity is also relatively high. This is another reason why people tend to plateau when they only focus on hypertrophy training, right? When you get stuck in that hypertrophy training and plateauing, I mean, I think of it very similarly as to an injury. I think that plateauing and getting injured are very similar concepts. I mean, an injury is usually like something that actually gets like straight up damaged and takes time to heal. But like when you plateau, that is like an injury or a plateau are both signs of the exhaustion phase of that general adaptation syndrome. They're both versions of somebody who worked too hard, too fast, and their body got worn out. And now it's not adapting to exercise anymore. It's just trying to serve. It's in survival mode. And so when you stay in hypertrophy for like really long periods of time, that might happen. And it's because the intensity is still relatively high and the training volume is really high. So these are our 2 highest volume areas. And this one can be potentially problematic. And this is very, you know, this is everybody's favorite phase. This is hypertrophy. This is where you get your gains. This is the one that everybody always wants to focus on. And so again, this is another reason why like hypertrophy is great and you can do it for 4 to 8 weeks, but it's really good to cycle out of that and then maybe come back to it afterwards. That's going to give you more growth than anything. And then if we look at like really high intensity, we're going to lower that training volume down pretty drastically. We're just going to see total training volume for max strength is going to be 4 times 1. So that is 4 up to 6 times 5. So a total of 30 total reps. So our training volume goes down, but that also makes a lot of sense considering that we have absolutely maximal intensity here, right? And then it's going to pop back up. Wait, where the heck am I? It's going to pop back up here at the end. Oh, wait, I forgot that I put too many columns down. I was like, why is stabilization at the bottom? It's going to pop back up at the end with power here, just barely, because you've got to add these 2 things together. But that's going to be a total training volume of 3, 2, and that's 1 plus 8, so that's 9. So a total training volume of 9 up to 5 times 5, 15 brain, which is 75 reps. However, that's 75 reps there, which is a crazy high number. Right? That is that is about as high as that is as high as we ever go. But the reason you're able to get away with that, again, look down here, the intensity is up to 10% of your body weight. You're using 30 to 45% of your 1 rep max. That is why that's allowed. So let's break this one down just slightly further. When you look at this like total repetition range here, 3 to 15 reps at 85 to 100% 1 RM. And then it is 3 times 8, 24 to 50 reps at 30 to 45% 1 RM. So like it makes sense that our training volume can be so high because there is some serious like low intensity here. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, because like the intensity is so low. This is like when you go to the park and you do like, or if you ever see, I've had people ask me, they're like, well, what about all those like Instagram workouts where people are doing like 5 minutes of mountain climbers nonstop and you do like 1,000 reps, right? It's like, yeah, you can get away with that because that's a body weight exercise that is a very, very low intensity. Yeah, you can do super high repetitions of that kind of stuff because the intensity is so low. But if the intensity were high, you really don't want to do that ultra repetition stuff. So that's kind of looking at training volume. The only real weirdo on the list is hypertrophy, which is all about just like, honestly, pushing almost outside of safe ranges of training volume, because that is what results in the most inflammation, which results in the most cellular growth. This is the reason your body is experiencing growth is literally because you are damaging the tissue so much that your body's physiologic response is like, I guess we'll make more tissue so that when it gets eaten away inevitably with this lifestyle, it won't get damaged as easily. We'll have some left over every time, So hypertrophy definitely relies on that. And by the way, you might have heard like the whole classic like 3 sets of 12, right? Like that's classic hypertrophy. If you look at like that, that's a 36 total reps, which is actually about half of what we're looking at in. Did I change this just now? Where the heck did it go? Yeah, 36 total reps, which is about half of, a little over half of your total training volume. So 3 sets of 12 is fine, but like 4 sets of 12 is way better. That's why I remember reading an article. There's like is 3 sets of 12 killing your gains? That's what they were saying. So next we got to look at is frequency. These are ones that we don't consider too often, but are actually kind of a big part of the conversation. And frequency is the number of training sessions in a given time period. Okay, so your training frequency is usually like, you're usually considering things in a 1 week period for the most part. Typically, we consider a training period in 1 week cycles, right? You have your Monday workout, Tuesday workout, Wednesday workout, right? That's generally what we look at there. Now, in terms, I'm going to put 2 things about frequency here. One of them I need to put an asterisk next to because it's not one of NASM's. It's not one of NASM's opinions. However, if you guys want to hear like the real gurus on training volume, check out this article by Brett. Is it Brent Contreras? Brett Contreras. Check this article by like Brett Contreras. Oh God, what's the other guy's name? Krieger. It's Krieger, not Kriegler. Krieger is a character from the show Archer. And Brad Schoenfeld. So these 3 guys got together and did a big meta-analysis discussing like hypertrophy and like muscular growth. This is an example of like the keto stuff, but like they're going to kind of break it down. These three guys are kind of the gurus in the world of acute variables right now. Yeah, I think this is the one I actually want. Resistance training. That's not it. But check out these guys, particularly Brad Schoenfeld is usually like the kind of the head guy here. All of them are really great, but check out any articles by these three guys working together. They did this big meta-analysis where they looked at all of the acute variables and they looked at like the results from all of them, and they tried to like pull out some of these general statistics. One of the things that they found is that an optimal training frequency for muscular strength and growth is hitting that muscle 2 times per week. Now, again, this is not in your NASM book, so we are asterisking this, but we'll put opinion warning. Opinion warning here. A lot of experts agree that the optimal training frequency for muscle growth and strength is hitting that muscle 2 times per week. So obviously you don't want to hit it like Monday and Tuesday. You want to take a little bit of rest in between. But for the most part, a lot of research suggests that optimal training frequency is about 2 times per week. This is why one of my favorite training splits is upper body, lower body, rest, upper body, lower body. That is one of my all-time favorites. I love like a good 2-day split. Or I will do a 4-day split that is the same thing, but I'll do different versions. So it'll be upper body, lower body, and that'll be upper A, lower A, and then it'll be like upper B, lower B. It'll be like 2 different versions, but the workout scheme will be the same. Like, let's say I was doing that classic 3 sets of 12, right? Maybe it would be like for my upper body, it would be like bench press, bent over row, and then like my upper body second workout instead, it could very easily just be bench press and bent over row again. But if I wanted to have more variety in my routine, I could do incline dumbbell chest press and pull-ups, so I could switch those things up. That is considered for the most part like optimal training frequency. And if you want to read some really good articles, read anything by those guys. Those Brad Schoenfeld, James Krieger, James is his name, and Brett Contreras. Those are the three big guys. So here's the other thing. This is in your books. In terms of optimal training frequencies, you want to train about 3 to 5 days per week for improvements, but 1 to 2 days per week may be enough for maintenance. If you are worried about like losing muscle or losing strength, 1 to 2 days a week may be enough to kind of keep that from happening. Nextly, we've got duration, which has 2 definitions. Duration's my least favorite because it drives me crazy. It's like, what are you doing just pick another word. So duration is 2 things. It is either the time frame from start to finish of a single workout session, or the number of weeks spent in a specific phase of training. So it can be either of those things. It can be either be however long your workout is it 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever, or are you in phase 1 for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, right? Both those are examples. And for the record, when it comes to duration, for the most part, you should be excluding your warm-up and cool-down from your duration. So you will hear a lot of trainers say this kind of magic number, and for the most part, this is still true from at least my best knowledge, that your workouts really shouldn't go over 90 minutes. And I know, like, we all know that guy in the gym who is just there for a couple hours a day, just working out. And it's like, you just have no life. You're just here all day, right? Like just, he's not a trainer. He's just hanging out, like working out literally all day. For the most part, that is honestly probably counterproductive. Generally, your workouts really shouldn't go over 90 minutes, because what starts to happen is after about 90 minutes of continual work, you start to deplete your glycogen stores. And once you're out of glycogen stores, you're losing energy, which means most of your training volume is what I like to call junk volume, which means, like, yeah, you're working out, but your intensity is so low because you're exhausted, and it would be much higher if you had rested. This is one of the reasons why I don't like, personally, I don't like the bro split. When it comes to like training splits, like that classic, like Monday chest, Tuesday back, Wednesday shoulder, you know, chest, back, shoulders, legs, arms, abs, you know, like separating all those things. One of the reasons I don't like that training split, number one, you're only working your muscles once per week, which, like I just talked about, is not really very optimal. And number two, since you are only working it once per week, if you need to get the right training volume, you need to make sure that you're doing lots of sets and reps in that one workout. And by the end of it, you've done so much chest stuff that you're, for the most part, exhausted, and you're not really lifting it at the right intensity anymore because you're worn out. So if you had like stopped it halfway and moved all that other stuff to another day per week, and paired some muscles up instead, it makes sure that your intensity remains high. Then we have exercise selection, which is going to be the specific exercises chosen, right? And so this is going to be, this is going to correspond with either stabilization exercises, strength exercises, and power exercises. Now, this right here is going to be listed in your book. You may have heard me say we don't do single joint power exercises, and that's true. Like, single joint is like where you're literally only moving one joint at a time. We don't do biceps or triceps in the power level. There are no bicep or tricep power exercises because those are single joint movements. We do have multi-joint movements, like a medicine ball chest pass is an example of a multi-joint: shoulder, elbow, and a little bit of wrist, right? And then there's total body. If I did a reverse lunge to medicine ball chest pass, that's a total body exercise, right? So we'll kind of lay these out here. So we got stabilization level. You are going to do total body, multi-joint, or single joint exercises. Okay, then you got the strength level, which is going to be the same thing: total body, multi-joint or single joint exercises. And in the power level, you're going to do total body or multi-joint exercises. Okay. So that's how that's going to work. And then we will look at some other rules for those later. So those are all of our main, like, acute variables as they are going to be listed. For the most part, you guys are going to be considering these things when you are writing individual workouts, but you want to make sure that you have these things considered in the back of your head, actually all of these things considered in the back of your head while you're writing that program. And this is one of the problems with, like, just writing a random routine every single time you go into the gym, or making something up every time. Like, we'll do this, I'll keep this rant short, but like, one of my least favorite things, one of the things that drives me absolutely insane when it comes to, you know, working in gyms and like watching other trainers, are those trainers who make it up as they go. Their client shows up and like, they're like, hey, you know what, the bench press is open, let's do that today because I need a chest exercise. Oh, you know what, that machine's open, let's go over there. Well, we've done a lot of like upper body stuff. let's head over to lower body machines and let's work on some of that. And then it'll be a total body routine today. You know, like those trainers that are making it up as they go. That is one of the worst things that is something you definitely want to avoid always. Don't get me wrong, it's actually great. They're still moving. It's not that it has no merit. It just means that it will always be, you know, that is very general, and we know that specific is always going to be better, right? Principle of specificity. The more specific the workout, the more effective it's going to be. So, periodization in the OPT. It will divide it into different phases, right? We got phases 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's different adaptations for each, either stabilization or endurance or hypertrophy or maximum strength or power. Now, one of the coolest ways that we do periodization, we have two different versions here. We have undulating and linear. So periodization is the concept of dividing a training program into distinct phases of training. Okay. There we go. I was like, I think the training thing should show up next. So when it comes to periodization, there's a couple key terms you need to know here. There's your annual plan, your monthly plan, and your weekly plan. Okay. So your annual plan, which is called a macro cycle, right? Cycle because it's like what you're doing for a period of time. Macro because it's huge. It's a year-long period, right? It is you literally considering the entire season for your athlete. So a macro cycle is a yearly plan. Do I get a definition here? No. Actually, that really is it. It is the overall plan for an individual over the course of an entire year, right? So this will go through several phases of training each month, okay? So then we got to consider our month, which is your mesocycle, your monthly plan. Actually, you know what? I just realized the reason this is kind of tripping me up, these are backwards. Macrocycle is the term they'll use. Annual plan is the one that comes up less. That's why this is freaking me out. Okay, so then mesocycle is a monthly plan. The monthly how long an individual or what phases of training an individual will go through per month. Okay. Sorry, per week. Then we have our weekly plan, which is your microcycle. And it says weekly plan here. Microsoft Word doesn't consider microcycle a word. A microcycle is like your week, and that it consists of your individual workouts. So this is the weekly plan consisting of individual workouts, right? AKA workout. Let's say it was something like workout A on Monday, workout B on Wednesday, and workout C on Friday. Okay, so that would be like an example of that. There's a lot of different ways that we do periodization. You know, you could take your client through stabilization, then strength endurance, then back to stabilization, then back to strength endurance. Those are our two highest calorie burning phases. So if your goal is just to burn as many calories as possible, you're just going to go phase 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then you don't have to be worried too much about your training volume because both of those intensities are relatively low. So your training volume is not going to be too high as long as, again, you are following all of those OPT rules. So as we're looking at this here, and then we do have phase 6, which is where it's like in season sports specific training, right? Again, we are not considering too much phase 6 stuff when we are talking about program design. We're talking about phases 1 through 5. But phase 6 would be like very, very, very sports specific. So stabilization would be considered like very much like corrective exercise, and then obviously just classic stabilization endurance. So you're not even seeing that on the chart here. If I go back one, there's even like corrective exercise, which would be before this. That's like phase 0.5, you know, in the original version of the OPT. So you would do corrective exercise maybe on Monday or something after like a big game. And then you would build your athlete up with stabilization endurance or whatever other phase of training they're doing. In the strength level, we've got 3 phases here. Strength endurance, which pairs up stabilization and strength-based work. It's very good for developing stability. It's very good for developing endurance, but there are some really good like hypertrophy and strength gains here as well. Hypertrophy is literally all about cellular adaptation and just muscle growth, and maximal strength is all about neurologic adaptation. It will sometimes result in muscle growth, but for the most part, it's really just about getting strong, which isn't always directly related to size. Then we have power training, which is supersetting force and velocity, right? And that is very key to athleticism. But then we have maximal power training, which is that sport-specific stuff, right? Maximal power in whatever type of power you need to do for your specific sport or activity. So we want to adjust our program accordingly, because this is the highest intensity stuff that we've got. This is where it is literally super explosive, super intense, and we want to make sure that we don't overtrain our athletes. So in the end, OPT model, proven, super easy to use system, and it allows you to apply stress specifically. Now, I want to go back to periodization here real quick, because there's 2 terms that I need you to know. They were mentioned really briefly. So when it comes down to periodization, we have linear periodization, which is periodization that is performed in one phase of training for an extended period, usually 1 month's time. But it's like, our example would be, you have a client who is in, the stabilization phase for the for 4 to 6 weeks, right? That's an example. All right, so what I want to do here is actually show you guys a small example of this. Handouts. Oh, that's not it. Hold on just a second. I gotta find it's probably in the archive. Oh God, the archive is so disorganized. I always have trouble when I go on these. No. All right, different method. No. Killing me, Smalls. Ah, we're close. I just need, I need this, but not in Word. Oh, you know what? Hold on. Hold on. Desktop. Nope. Oh, there it is. Heck yeah. Okay. Nope, no, it's not. Got so excited. Fudge. All right. All right, we'll make one up. So, linear periodization. Here's a really good example. I'm going to go ahead and insert a table here. I was really hoping to find something I can copy paste. Let's just do, we'll do 6 months isn't so bad. All right. So here's an example of linear periodization, guys. We are going to call this January, February, March, April, May, and June. Okay. And oh, I need one more column. Insert column to the left. Phase. So we've got phase 1 here, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and phase 5. Okay. So now what you're going to do is you're going to determine, like in linear periodization, while you are determining like what phase of training your client is in, if it's linear, you're staying in one phase of training every single time. So an example of that would be like in the month of January, I'm going to be in stabilization. In the month of February, I'm going to move to strength endurance. And in March, I'm going to go into power. And then it looks like that. So this is linear periodization. I stay in one line for the month, okay? So then, like if I were to zoom into January, if I were to zoom into January here, what? Why not? Oh, this is being all weird now. This is why I wanted to copy paste. Split these cells into 6 columns. All right, so then we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, right? And Sunday. So now, let's say I'm trying to figure out like what workout they're gonna do, right? If I have them, this is January, so we know that we are in the stabilization phase because this is linear periodization, right? So what would happen is I would do like workout A on Monday. Stupid thing. God, I hate Zoom. Okay, I would do workout A on Monday, workout B on Wednesday, and then let's just say I go back to workout A on Friday. I'm doing a 2-day split, right? And then this is their cardio here. Okay, so it looks something like this. Workout A on Monday, workout B on Wednesday, workout A again on Friday. Next week, I'm gonna do basically the same thing, except that it's going to be workout B first, cardio again, workout A again, cardio, B, cardio, rest. And then I am just going to do the exact same thing for the next 2 weeks. A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, right? Should I put the words cardio? Does it fit? It kind of fits. That looks much better. All right, so that's an example of linear periodization, right? And all of this would be in phase 1. Okay. Now, let's take a look at undulating periodization, right? Undulating periodization is going to be similar to this, except that instead of staying in one phase of training, you are actually going to use multiple phases of training per week. So this is going to be, and then actually, you know, I need to do one more thing. I need to do a quick little microcycle here. So there's your mesocycle for the month, right? Here's our macrocycle. And actually, I'll tell you what, we'll even label that. Let's put a row above. We'll say this is a merge cells. So we'll say this is our macrocycle. And then here's our mesocycle. Of course you did. Okay, so there's our macrocycle, there's our mesocycle. Now I will do one more, which will be our microcycle. Okay, and so this would be workout A. And so workout A would be stabilization. And so, you know, it would be, then you would have like an OPT template, right? All of this would be your basic OPT template here. So I'm actually going to delete that because I can't fit an entire OPT template here. But your workout A would just be like a warm up in stabilization, and then like movement prep that corresponds with stabilization. Then your workout B is also stabilization. Okay, so there's your microcycle, right? It's the individual like workouts. Both are stabilization routines. Now, undulating periodization is going to be utilizing multiple phases of training within a given time period. Okay, so when you are using multiple phases of training. So let's go back to like our macro cycle here, right? And let's say our macro cycle is going to use the same concept for the first 3 months. So we'll say you're going to do stabilization in January, you're going to do strength endurance in February, and you're going to do power in March. And that'll be like leading up to your season with your client, right? Maybe that's the off-season training. But then preseason, we need to switch to an undulating periodization style where in the month of April, May, and in the month of June, we're using multiple phases of training all simultaneously. Do you guys see that? Do you guys see what I'm saying here? Like we've got a stabilization day, a strength endurance day, and a power day, which means a workout A, workout B split can't work anymore because even in our monthly, there is clearly 3 workouts listed. Do you guys see what I'm saying? Is that tracking?
Yeah, I see it.
Let me tell you, this is going to be like my biggest challenge. This works so much better on a whiteboard. All right, so there's our macro cycle. So now let's look at a mesocycle. Let's look at the month of April, okay? So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go down here. And let's look at we're going to look at April. And this is going to be undulating phases 1, 2, and 5. Okay, so that's the month of April. So we're going to keep the same thing. Let's say our client is used to those lifting days and they're used to those cardio days. So now you're going to have workout A, workout B, and now we have to have a workout C. We have to have at least bare minimum 3 splits because we have to have total body routines here. A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. Cardio days, same thing. Now, the cardio could, we're going to go back to that, and we're going to look at how that also can get more complicated here. But now, let's look at our microcycle. I would write 3 OPT workouts that correspond with what we're looking at here. So we would have workout A, workout B, and workout C. And workout C would be power. Workout B would be strength endurance, and workout A would be stabilization. So we have workout A, workout B, and workout C. And I would write a different OPT template for each of those individually. Does that make sense so far, guys? Anybody lost on that? Anybody confused?
Negative.
Cool. All right, so let's look at, let's go back and modify these things and make them slightly more complicated. So now we also need to consider our cardio, right? Remember, cardio, you've got stages 1, 2, and 3. Stage 1 corresponds with stabilization. Stage 2 corresponds with strength. Stage 3 corresponds with power. So now, with our client who's in our mesocycle here, which is strength endurance, or stabilization endurance, right? They're in the stabilization phase. Their cardio is stage 1 the entire time, right? They are only in stage 1 the whole time. So we can keep this really, really simple. We can modify this just like that. Tell you what, I'll put it in italics just to signify the difference. All right, so now, yeah. Almost. That almost worked. Okay, these are pretty easy to understand. They're literally just stage 1 every single time. Why are you underlined? Don't do that. All right, so they're in stage 1. But then we go down to our macrocycle here. We got a client who's doing different types of cardio throughout the week. So it would make sense that this would be a stage 1 type of cardio on at the beginning of the week, right? So that's corresponding with their workout A, which was stabilization. Then we have Thursdays where we are going to do stage 2 cardio. And then we have the power day where they are going to do stage 3 cardio. So let's say you were writing this routine out. You would write like a total body stabilization exercise for Monday, and then you would have your client go for, let's say, a long stage 1, just steady state cardio workout on Tuesday. I'd be like, all right, just go for a jog. It's great, you know, something gentle. Then on Wednesday, they would come back and you would do a strength endurance workout. And then they would do some medium interval training on Thursday for their cardio. They would maybe do that classic, 1 minute of like 76 to 85% of their max heart rate. Then they would recover for 3 minutes at that slow, steady state pace. And they would just kind of alternate 1 minute, 3 minute, 1 minute, 3 minute, 1 minute, 3 minute. Then on Friday, you would have them go through like a total body power workout. And then their cardio would be like maximal intensity, medium intensity, low intensity. Back up to the top. 95% max heart rate, 85% max heart rate, 65% max heart rate, right? They were really like using different ranges, like sprint, recover, right? And then on Sunday, they would rest. I like to use this example. Now, this is 3 days of lifting per week, which is pretty good, with 3 days of cardio, which is oftentimes a lot. This would work really well for like a very cardio-based athlete, but a lot of times you're not always. I just like to use this as an example because it's very clean and evenly distributed. There's no reason you can't go like 1 week to the next. Like we kind of did that up here actually. It was like A, B, A, and then we considered what we did in the last week to the next week, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, right? Let's say, you could totally do a different version of this. And I'm just going to do one random example here. Let's say it's a hypertrophy client, right? Your mesocycle with a hypertrophy client would focus less on cardio and focus much more on strength, right? And so this one I'm going to delete actually after we're done with it. But let's just say this is, we'll say it's in the month of December, right? Their gift is the gift of gains. So we'll be hypertrophy. And so we'll say that's going to be workout A, workout B, workout C, and workout D, right? Then we would do cardio. Okay. And we would maybe just keep that whole thing every week. And so then it would, their microcycle, you know, you could maybe write this out just slightly different. Workout A is upper body. Workout B is lower body. And then you have a different workout for C. It is still upper body, but it's different. It's just a different routine. So this would be upper body, and workout D is lower body again, right? And then this would be stage 1, and then this would be stage 2. And that's not a terrible hypertrophy routine, right? This would be a really good bodybuilder who's going into like competition somewhat soon, you know? That wouldn't be bad, actually. This would be really good because it has enough cardio to kind of trim everything off, trim off the fat, and make sure they don't gain too much weight that's unwanted. But at the same time, they're getting plenty of strength training. And then, you know, I could always do just like the classic bro split, you know? We could do A, B, C, D, E, and workout F. And so workout A is chest, back, legs, shoulders, arms, abs. A whole freaking day dedicated to abs. Don't do it. It's a waste of time. But there it is. There's the classic freaking 6-day split. Hate it. It's against everything I like. But there's your classic, right? A, B, C, D, E, F. If you want to have a 6 days of lifting and no cardio, by the way, you know, or maybe you're just doing 20 minutes of cardio at the end of all your sessions, you know what works a lot better is workouts A, B, and C, chest, back, and legs, and then you just repeat. And that's really good. An even better version, I know I'm getting real intense here, but an even better version of the same thing that is technically a 6-day split is to get it to cross over the midline. And so it would be this: A, B, C, rest, A, B, C, rest, A, B, C, rest, A, B, C, rest. There we go. Whew. I know that got complicated, but here's like a staggered version, right? 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. This is arguably one of the best routines in like the weightlifting world. And we're saying chest, back, legs, but honestly, it fits a lot better when you call it push, pull legs. This is the classic push-pull split, if you guys have ever heard of that. Pushing is like chest and shoulders. Pulling is like the different parts of your back, like rowing and like upward, downward pulling. And so like this is a very good routine. that really focuses a lot on like strength. It's really good for strength and really good for like muscle growth. So let's go ahead and actually delete that because I don't want that to be in the notes that I send you guys later. But if you need a screenshot, get a screenshot. We'll do more examples of this when we get into the program design because again, like I said, this is going to be somewhat similar to your guys' project. So we're going to get more practice with this in the next couple days. Do you guys have any questions about any of that?
Nope. No, it's all good.
Feeling good, guys?
Yeah.
All right. So and the big thing I want you to know, that's the difference between linear and undulating. All right. So let's kill the next PowerPoint. So I'm going to go ahead and end this first recording, and then we'll get back for a second video in just a second. So